I'm Thorsten Quandt. I'm a professor of online communication at the University of Münster in Germany. Yeah, dark participation is actually the use of the participation principles that you have online for something else, to influence people or to spread hate. So it's kind of the evil side of online participation. I think we see kinds of influence and disinformation campaigns on all social media, so it's not just one platform. But we also see disinformation campaigns on the forums of news sites, and wherever you can actually contribute something on the internet, people are using that for their own purposes. And it really depends on whether it's a political communication or not, or whether it influences the public, whether it's attractive, especially for outside groups, to influence the public in these forums or on these platforms. Well, all the big platforms have, their problems in a way. Facebook, Twitter, you name it. So wherever you go, you will find groups that are, not what they seem to be. But there are certainly some platforms that are a bit more problematic. I mean, there were some platforms that were also shut down for that purpose, for that reason, because they were serving a kind of a different purpose. And I think you can use these platforms out there that are, like that, but you should be aware of the fact that not everything is what it seems to be. At the beginning of the 2000s, everybody was super hopeful about participation, because we actually hoped that participation will save journalism and save democracy. Everybody can become part of that conversation of society. That was our hope and expectation. And in a way that was pretty naive, because we were expecting every citizen basically to be very motivated to contribute actively to communication. Yeah, that's a typical academic expectation, that everybody is super motivated to do something basically academic in a way. And what we have seen in the last 10 to 20 years is that this has really changed from the beginning of the 2000s until now, because nowadays it's total opposite. There's not much hope left, and a lot of people say, this is doom and gloom. All social media are basically just a place for hate and disinformation. But I think also that change is a problem, because that's also not true. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. There's good and there's bad out there, and I think the good outweighs the bad. I think you should use all the sources that are out there, not only the sources from your own political spectrum. I think that's the one thing that I would advise you to do, because people have a tendency to use media according to their own perceptions, their own political opinion, their own kind of upbringing in a way. And that is even true for journalism students in a way. If you have a journalism student that is a bit more left-orienting, there's a natural tendency to prefer this type of medium or these type of media that are kind of, more on the left of the spectrum. The same is true for people that are more conservative. And I think the best thing as a journalist or as somebody who's also motivated to be well informed, it's, I think, a good idea to actually use all the sources that are out there. And probably not only sources from within the country, but also sources from outside. I mean, that's one of the good things about online communication, that you basically can get access to all types of information. Not all of it is good, not all of it is factual, and you have to be careful then. But I mean, if you're an American, you can also use the BBC, you can go to the website of The Guardian, you can use German Spiegel, you can even have a look at media from other countries, Russian media, if you can get access to them these days. If you can read Chinese, you probably could get access to some Chinese media. And so if you have the option, broaden your spectrum, but use it, with care, and do not expect everything to be truthful and factual. Nowadays, we're using a lot of computational methods. When I started doing research, that was not available. So basically, everything was done by hand, more or less. Or you were using computers for the data analysis. But nowadays, you actually can use computers to collect the information, to analyze that information, and to get a much broader view of what's happening out there. So in our research, we were more or less collecting all the news we could get from our country, and you could have a very detailed look at how the information flow is within the country. And that's also one of the really good messages, especially if you do research on disinformation or propaganda, that you basically can also identify that with the tools we have nowadays. So not everything is lost in a way. We actually are just learning how to use these tools, but I think that's very exciting, that we can expand our tool set in a way. I think a lot of detours and coincidences led me to where I am now. So I would be lying if I would say there was a big plan that I had. And I think that's what a lot of people experience. I do not trust people that say, I was planning then from the start. I was born and then I wanted to become a professor. That was definitely not my plan. And I also tried journalism. I worked for a short time, especially as a radio journalist. I also have some experiences with television and also print. But then I started doing research, and I learned that I'm really good at doing that. And so somehow I stayed in that area, and I got my PhD and later on a professorship, and I kind of never looked back, actually. I think the good thing about communication and media as a field is that it's very broad and you can specialize depending on your interest. So you can work in journalism, you can also do research on journalism, you can go to strategic communication, PR, you can do research on political communication. So the field is really very broad in the sense of everything we do as human beings is in a way depending on communication. So it's very central. I think communication and media is essential in the understanding of societies, and as we see nowadays, it's also essential for our democracy. So you can actually contribute when you do journalism, you can contribute when you do PR, and I think that's one of the good things here. There's not just one field. And in my own career, I not only did journalism research, but I also did game studies. That was a kind of a big detour from where I started and what I did in between. And again, I, as a split personality doing games research and journalism and disinformation research, I never felt out of place in a way. And I think that's the good thing about our field, that there are so many options there. At the moment, I'm pretty excited to be on sabbatical. So I'm staying in Vancouver at the moment, and that's really helpful in getting new insight and actually kind of recalibrate your research to understand the world better. Because I think these international experiences are very important, not only for professors, also for students, I think. Yeah. So I would always recommend to students to go somewhere else and experience the world and get also an outside view, and I think that's very exciting. In terms of my own research, I have certain plans to expand my research on disinformation and kind of marry it with the research I've done on games. So we have a plan to do a research project on toxic communities in gaming, and it sounds strange, but I think that's quite exciting in a way to do research on that, because again, it's a field where you can explore and where there's not much work out there, and I always like to do that, to kind of explore new areas where people haven't thought about, in terms of this is a real research field, and maybe we will see how that goes, but I'm really excited about that, and hopefully we will have some projects and publish on that soon. the one thing that's important when you study media and communication, the first thing I heard when I started doing that is like, what are you doing? Is that really serious? You're not studying mathematics or physics or whatever. And actually, I have two brothers that are in physics. But then I learned over time that this is really a crucial topic for the whole of society. So whenever somebody tells you, engineering or all these hard sciences are more important, you definitely should answer no, they're not, if you want democracy to survive. So I think as a communication student, you're doing a really important job that's as worthwhile and as important as these hard sciences. And this is not directed against my friends in mathematics or physics, but it's actually, we saying, or I want to say, we need that type of research. We need these fields, because if you wouldn't have them, I think as societies we would be lost.